That night, I went to bed completely unaware of what was about to happen. I was exhausted, my body sinking into the mattress, the warmth of the sheets wrapping around me. Then I felt it, a cold touch on my leg, slow and deliberate, sliding upward with a strange mix of gentleness and control. My heart began to pound as a warm breath brushed against my neck, sending a sharp shiver down my spine. I thought I was alone, but in that moment, I knew I wasn't. I froze in place, too afraid to open my eyes, but unable to ignore the sensation spreading across my skin. The coldness lingered for a moment before giving way to a strange warmth, as if something unseen was close enough to share its breath with me. My chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. Every part of me screamed to move, to turn on the light, yet I couldn't. It was as if my body had been pinned down by nothing more than the weight of the air. I finally forced my eyes open, only to find the room exactly as I had left it. Or at least, that's how it appeared. The dim orange glow from the streetlight crept in through the small gap in the curtains. My dresser stood still, my chair sat in the corner, my phone lay on the nightstand. Everything looked normal, and yet the air felt wrong, thick, almost charged. I told myself it was exhaustion, maybe even the edge of a dream. I pulled the blanket tighter around me, trying to convince myself I was safe. But the moment I closed my eyes again, the sensation returned. This time, it was firmer, a deliberate press of something cold against the side of my thigh, moving slowly, as though tracing the shape of my body. My breath caught in my throat, and I gripped the blanket with trembling fingers. The logical part of my mind tried to find an explanation. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe it was just the shift of the mattress. But then I felt the faint tug at the hem of my nightgown. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't aggressive. It was slow, almost teasing, like someone was testing how far they could go before I reacted. I sat up quickly, my heart pounding in my ears, scanning the dark corners of the room. Nothing moved. There was no sound except for the faint hum of the refrigerator in the other room. Still, my instinct screamed at me that I wasn't alone. I could feel it, a presence, watching, waiting. I lay back down, but this time I kept my eyes open, fixed on the faint strip of light seeping through the curtains. Minutes passed, or maybe it was only seconds. Then I saw it, the shape of a shadow moving along the wall, slow and deliberate, until it disappeared into the darkest corner of the room. The shadow lingered in the corner, motionless, as if it knew I was staring at it. My mind tried to find shapes in the darkness. Maybe it was just my coat hanging from the chair. Maybe the light from the street was playing tricks on me. But then it shifted. Not much, just enough for me to know it was no object. I reached toward my nightstand for my phone, my eyes never leaving that spot. My fingers brushed against the cold surface, but before I could grab it, I felt the mattress dip beside me. The movement was slow, deliberate, as though someone was lowering themselves onto the bed without making a sound. My body stiffened, my breath quickened. I wanted to scream, but my voice was caught somewhere deep inside my chest. Something grazed my arm, cold but faintly trembling, like a breathless hand trying to memorize my skin. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to think. If this was a dream, it was the most vivid one I had ever had. If it wasn't, then someone or something was in my bed. The touch moved again, this time trailing down my arm to my waist. There was no rush, no aggression. It was the kind of slow, steady movement that felt almost intimate, but carried an undercurrent of control. My skin prickled, torn between the urge to pull away and the strange, hypnotic pull to stay still. The air grew heavier, my ears filled with the sound of my own heartbeat, each thud louder than the last. I could smell something faint now, not unpleasant, but unfamiliar, a mix of earth and something sweet, almost metallic. I turned my head slightly toward the scent, and that's when I felt it, the warmth of a face hovering inches from mine. Every instinct told me to get up, to run, but I was trapped between terror and curiosity. What would happen if I didn't move? If I just let this thing, whatever it was, finish what it had started? A faint pressure settled against my hip, almost like the weight of a hand. Then came the shift, the slow slide of the blanket being drawn back, just far enough to expose my leg to the cold air. My nightgown's hem followed, inching higher, though I never saw anything pulling it. I forced myself to speak, my voice low and unsteady. "Who's there?" No answer, only silence, and the sensation of something brushing the inside of my thigh, so lightly it could have been imagined. If not for the way my entire body reacted, the sensation on my thigh lingered, feather-light yet impossible to ignore. My muscles tensed, my breath shallow, every nerve in my body tuned to that one point of contact. Then, as if testing me, it moved higher, not in a rush, but with deliberate slowness, like it wanted me to feel every inch of the journey. My hands clenched into fists under the blanket, torn between pulling away and finding out what came next. I tried to see through the darkness, my eyes darting toward the corner where the shadow had been. It wasn't there anymore. My gaze swept across the room. The chair was empty, the dresser untouched. But the weight on the mattress told me I wasn't alone. A sudden draft swept across my skin, carrying that same faint scent, earth, sweet, and metallic. It filled my head, clouding my thoughts. My breathing grew uneven. I felt the blanket shift again, this time sliding further down, pulling at my waist. The cold air made my skin tighten, heightening every sensation. And I felt it. Not just a touch, but a presence leaning closer, close enough for the warmth of its breath to fan across my lips. My pulse roared in my ears. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. Every part of me was locked in place, waiting. And then, without warning, the warmth was gone. The bed grew lighter, the air less heavy. My body jerked as if released from an invisible hold. I sat up quickly, searching the room, my eyes scanning every shadow. Nothing moved. The silence was suffocating. I reached for my phone, my hands trembling, and turned on the flashlight. The beam swept across the room, the walls, the furniture, the curtains, all perfectly still. But when I turned the light toward the foot of my bed, I saw it. A handprint, clear against the white fabric of my blanket. The outline was larger than any human hand, the fingers impossibly long, the skin print smeared with what looked like a faint, dark residue. My stomach dropped. I backed away toward the headboard, never taking my eyes off that mark. It didn't fade. It didn't smear when I reached out to touch it. It stayed there, like a signature, a silent reminder of what had just shared my bed. The air around me felt different now, not heavy, but expectant, like whatever it was hadn't left completely. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it still in the room, watching from somewhere I couldn't see? Or had it simply stepped away, waiting for another night to return? I didn't sleep again until sunrise, and even then it wasn't rest. It was the uneasy, shallow drift of someone waiting for the next time something cold, and deliberate would touch them in the dark. If you've ever woken up to something you couldn't explain, if you've ever felt a touch in the dark when you knew you were alone, you're not imagining it. Subscribe to Paranormal Sleep and see what happens while you sleep.